Welcome, friends. This is the very first show of Exile. This show is provided by a Cuban exile, and my purpose in talking to you, Americans, is for you to avoid also being an exile. Currently, we're going through a revolution in the United States. It's not like a revolution, it is a revolution, and a violent one at that. It began with a resistance. The resistance, that term by itself is already an insurrectional term. But now we're into full fledged violence where people who, let's say, decide to support President Trump are afraid to have a bumper sticker, are afraid to express themselves in their office or their workplace, and are afraid in any other sort of media unless they have a job that they feel confident that they are not going to lose. So we have already lost a significant amount of freedom. We have already constrained ourselves greatly in our ability to put out our ideas in the marketplace and to be able to feel free like it used to be in the US. So this show is for those that already know this, or for those that need reminding, or perhaps this is the first time they've thought in these terms. I would like you to visit our website where we have an article that I recently wrote, and it's called Why Should Americans Not Vote for Biden? Look at the Biden-Bernie plan. During the last, or the first and last presidential debate, Mr. Biden said, in replying to President Trump, that Mr. Biden, was the head of the Democrat Party. And he distanced himself as much as possible from Bernie Sanders. I am of the view that Mr. Biden simply wants to get elected. He has tried for many years to be president and usually got around 1% of the vote in the Democrat primary. But I predicted that he would be the candidate way before any of the several debates took place within Democrat primaries. And the reason was the Democrats are not dumb enough to put out Bernie Sanders as their candidate. If you look back at the communist Bolsheviks, all the various communist parties, the Communist Party that you see is the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the Communist Party is underground. And Bernie Sanders is the official, or the above the iceberg part, where he declares himself to be a socialist. But lately, people like Ocasio-Cortez and others have spoken more directly about their Marxist leanings. And Black Lives Matter, the organization, used to have on its website that they were Marxist, that they were against the family unit, etc. And as they have gained more prominence and millions of dollars from naive individuals or from corporations that are afraid, just like I would be afraid to put a bumper sticker on my car, corporations are afraid to say anything that could be misconstrued by the public, and therefore they are willing or unwilling participants in going along with supporting this effort that mixes any kind of violence against any policeman with supposed permanent or systematic racism in the United States. It is my opinion that Mr. Biden has made a left turn, and it is impossible for him to get out of it now. He has a GPS, a government people's socialism. It's a dead end for our economy, and he's going to crash our freedoms and our liberties. I have followed Joe Biden for a long career. I remember his speeches about Iraq. I remember his speeches about civil rights. And he would be the last candidate that I would put up if I wanted to really cultivate the African American vote. And yet I understand fully why the Democrat Party had him as their only options. The other candidates were midgets. The other candidates had no standing. Even his own VP choice, Kamala Harris, had to drop out very early before the very first primary. So I would like to alert you to the Biden-Bernie plan. During the recent tumultuous presidential debate, Mr. Biden denied that he had a manifesto. And he used this technique because he didn't call it a manifesto. He called it the Biden plan. But that is what President Trump was referring to when he said manifesto. So by simply saying, playing with words, that he had no manifesto, he tried to get away from the 110 pages in which he describes the platform that he proposes to run on. Now, I'd like to be honest, the platforms of political parties many times have absolutely nothing or very little to do with the actual governing. Parties are not restricted to their platforms. So it is true that he's not bound to do any of these things once he becomes president. But nonetheless, it gives a very clear picture of how he has surrendered to Bernie Sanders and how he has adopted the exact same language as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of the group of four. I'd like to tell you what he has in mind. Some things that sound very nice. He would like to extend Medicare instead of beginning at 65 to begin at 60. And he would like to give free health care, basically, subsidized by higher premiums to the rest of us, to people he considers poor. But he introduces a couple of things that are super dangerous, and they are percentages. For example, nobody needs to pay more than 8.5% of their income in premiums. That puts the government directly into looking at your income and deciding what is fair and what is unfair. The government is in the driver's seat directly, selecting who's poor and who's not. And if you put an amount, 8.5% of your income, it means that the rest of that premium has to be paid by somebody, and that somebody will be the rest of the population. You have to consider that only 15% of the US population did not have insurance when Obamacare came to be. So 85% of the population, the rest of us, we're paying our premiums, and now we're faced with having to come up with a deficit even larger than under Obamacare, because if a person is very poor and he only has to pay 8.5%, you can imagine what is the rest. The main philosophical point here is, who is the government to be determining what percentage of somebody's income needs to be devoted to healthcare? And obviously, if you are very poor, 8.5% is going to be a very small contribution. Therefore, I say that Santa Claus will be busy underwriting insurance policies. Santa Claus will be the one that will be gifting to these people extra money. Now, in the US, old people have medical health care under Medicare, and poor people have Medicaid So right now, the US already has a safety net that works fairly well. But now they want to expand who is poor. In other words, expand the subsidy that the rest of society has to. Um, Regarding crime, Biden in 1994 had a crime bill that put a lot of people in jail. Usually, African Americans were hit very hard with this. President Trump has done a real crime bill reform by which he has analyzed those people that were unjustly serving terms in prison that were just absolutely too long. Well, now Mr. Biden is going to undo his own 1994 crime bill, and he would like to have a database in which he's going to harass the police by making sure that everybody knows who's who in the police. In other words, putting the spotlight on the police. In addition to that, he wants to end cash bail. These people think that cash bail is only good for rich people, and therefore that you commit a crime or you're accused of a crime, you can simply walk out. If you can simply walk out, you're going to escape in many situations. You're not going to show. They would also like no life without parole for any juvenile, no matter what horrendous crime he might have committed. For example, the crimes of the M13 are horrendous, where they chop people with machetes. These people are very young, and according to him, you could never give them life without parole, no matter how horrendous their crime. Marijuana would be decriminalized, medicinal marijuana would be legalized, and without this cash bail, violent looters will be out the same night, enjoying a joint lit by their arsonist comrades. As if the fires lead to climate change, Mr. Biden will have us spend $1.7 trillion to get to zero emissions by 2050, eliminating fossil fuels for power generation by 2035, and getting to carbon neutral buildings by 2030, and placing 500 million solar panels in 5 years. This is exactly the same stuff as AOC. This is exactly the same stuff. Can you imagine retrofitting all the buildings in the United States of America? In addition to this, the US will squander its newly gained energy independence, gained under President Trump, giving away the game to China, a country that will continue to merrily pollute the whole world outside the Paris Agreement. China is not a member of the Paris Agreement, and Biden would joyfully return the U.S. to the Paris Agreement. Every time you hear the U.S. will pay, the translation U.S. means us, you and me. Regarding race relations, in addition to the usual Democrat largesse at the expense of us, the BB plan recommends a comprehensive agenda for communities of color with ambition that matches the scale of the challenge and with recognition that race-neutral policies are not sufficient to race-based disparities. Translation: the payouts depend on your color. Forget Martin Luther King's idea to judge us by our character and not the color of our skin. Regarding jobs, it's not the private sector that will do the job. The government must enact measures to create jobs and job programs like those effectively used during the New Deal. This is the deal. You send us money to DC, and we will send it back to you, minus a swamp commission. Regarding education, Obama is out and Bernie is in. Obama liked standardized tests. No more standardized tests. The schools will increasingly be centers to distribute food and healthcare. while testing will now be holistic. Translation: measurements and rigorous academic standards will be substituted now. Did you ever learn anything from a substitute teacher? And while Obama favored charter schools, the Biden Bernie plan is to place them under close scrutiny. Translation: bye bye under Bernie. There will be no more charter school. You know, Biden's wife is an educator, and they are arm to arm with the two leading teachers associations in the US. And Mr. Biden has publicly stated these unions will be in the driver's seat. This is the same unions that have shown that they don't care about their students, but rather they're not going to go back to class. They still want to get paid, but they're not going to go back to class because they don't have enough hygiene, they don't have enough PPE, and if the students learn or not, it's not their concern. The Biden-Bernie plan also Mr. Biden wasn't about to send his children to a racial jungle. That's the term he used. Biden was ripped apart because of this by Kamala Harris, of all people. The Biden-Harris plan gives out free 2-year college for all and free 4-year public college for families under $125,000 a year. He will forgive our student debts as he also gives us our daily bread. You will need to save up, though. You will now need to pay for other people's college. No such thing as a free lunch, said Milton Friedman, except in the Biden-Bernie schools, which now include breakfast and dinner in addition to lunch. Regarding housing, it's come on down and it's the price is right. Nobody will need to pay more than 30% of their income on housing. Again, what in heck is the government's role to determine if I want to spend 35% of my income on housing or not? It puts the government right smack in the middle of controlling our lives. Nobody will need to pay more than 30% of their income in housing. Mrs. Santa Claus will be in charge of this program. Everybody gets the Plan 8. Under Biden-Bernie, bankers will go postal. The very efficient United States postal system will now offer banking services backed by the US, way backed by us as we wait in line. The Biden-Bernie plan does the Green New Deal in 15 years rather than AOC's 10 years. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Biden. It mandates what energy is produced and which not. There will be a Solyndra windmill in every neighborhood by crook or by hook. We will only use renewables, wind or sun. Sounds like a day at the beach, but dark clouds are overhead. There's also the BB Care Corps. There will be armies of healthcare, childcare, elder care, and climate care workers with France-like benefits. They will be able to go on strike, and they will be able to strike great deals from us, from the US government. Translation: it will be government for and of the government. There are exceptions to every rule, and so police are now second-class government. They will be tracked, and they will work catch and release mode. Will they be police, social workers, or fish and wildlife officers? The Bernie Biden plan likes shareholder capitalism, a famous favorite term from the United Nations. Shareholder capitalism spells the end of capitalism allowing, in addition to the state, for workers, consumers, and labor unions to have a seat at the table. Translation: People, this is serious. Look at how much time and effort these people have placed into killing the goose that laid the golden eggs, stealing from us our 401k nest eggs. Regarding race, the BB plan races to the most hypocritical of positions. Biden was the vice president for Obama for 8 years when racism was not systematic, but just in time, it has erupted just as the election's coming up. Reparations must be sought and meritocracy be replaced with racial purity tests. As the percentage of Black in you impacts your payout from the United States government. Translation, time to buy Ancestry and 23andMe. Oops, sorry, I forgot about stakeholder capitalism. Never mind. For those that have had firsthand knowledge of socialism, like I have, the question is not if we should vote for Trump or not, but to realize that these stakeholders are holding our feet to the fire and will burn us at the stake. With friends like Bernie and Biden, who needs enemies? No way, Jose Biden, I will not vote for you. For once, Kamala was right. I hope to have provided you some information on the Bernie Biden manifesto that Mr. Biden claims does not exist. Wanted to alert you to those things that they have explicitly promised to do. Never mind those things they have in their pocket to be released afterwards. The Republic is in deep danger. Never have the two parties have their name better describe them. The Democrat Party is in favor of democracy, which means majority rule, regardless whether the majority has made the right decisions or not. Republicanism is the way the founding fathers created this government, which has plenty of checks and balances so that the passions of the moment cannot dictate what needs to be done. But democracy, as in the Democrat Party, is totalitarian in the sense that you can see it in your TV screens where you're placidly having a nice dinner and these Antifa, which Biden claims don't exist, come and sit on your table and kick you out. Or when BLM shows up with a bat or shows up with an incendiary device. So we are in a situation where the other side is not respecting our constitutional rights. They have some very dangerous plans. You might remember that Obama, in his earlier campaigns for president, mentioned the 57 states. Well, it turns out the US has 50 states, but it has Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the Mariana Islands, Washington, D.C. It has other territories that can become states if the Congress so desires. If in this election we elect Biden and also a U.S. Congress under Democrats and a U.S. Senate under Democrats, they will quickly fill the flag with 57 stars. That will give them 14 new senators, all likely Democrat. In addition to that, if we have 9 Supreme Court justices, by the time they get into power, they can add it to 13, 11, 15, any number they wish, just like their famous hero, Roosevelt, Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to do. It's called packing the courts. That means that the third branch of the government will become a Democrat legislature, just like the Senate or the House of Representatives. It will lose all judicial independence. This is plain for anybody to understand. In addition to that, just for measure, They will abolish the rule that you need 60 votes to pass a bill in the Senate. This is called the filibuster. The minority was able to block those laws that did not have enough bipartisan support. That was one of the guarantees of the Republic, that the Senate would be a place for cooler heads. That is the reason why our founding fathers gave the senators 6 years in office, so they wouldn't have to face the public so frequently, whereby, as a balance, they gave us 2-year terms in the Congress. This amazing system enables bad ideas to be gradually dropped and good ideas have a chance to grow and eventually become laws. But it provides a filter, it provides a check, and it provides a balance. This would also be gone. These three measures puts us in extreme danger that once a one-party system is instituted, the government can never return. We have seen one-party systems across the world. It is very easy to get into them and almost impossible to get out of them. And that is why this podcast is called Exile, because there is no other place in the world where we'll be able to be exiled, because this cancel culture will not allow anyone to find another place in the world where this brilliant constitution can be saved or can be adopted. This is the city on the hill. This is the last chance for humanity. Under President Trump, the economy had reached the highest point in the history of the world. There had never been a society with such low unemployment. There had never been a society creating the amount of wealth that was created when it quickly was put to an end in February of the year 2020. So I urge all of you to be very careful with your vote and not to thrust it away. Even if you don't like some of the mannerisms of President, you have to agree that everything that he promised, he has done. He has appointed judges and justices. He has reduced regulations. He has put tariffs on the Chinese exports, allowing competition in the US to bring back our manufacturing. You must understand, very rich countries like Spain, they had a plenty of gold and plenty of silver. They didn't manufacture anything. The Spanish Empire went down. The Netherlands didn't have anything, and they became a powerful country, very rich country. The only thing they had was wind. England was a tiny little outpost of civilization and became the large empire in the world because they adopted the rule of law. They adopted the Magna Carta and all the other regulations that eventually became part of the American Constitution. If a country doesn't manufacture enough, it will eventually come to ruin. You can't be just simply consumers. So Mr. Trump, the first businessman to be in the office in a very, very long time, has done things that no one else even thought of. Nobody was talking about China. Nobody thought you could bring these jobs back. Mr. Obama laughed at Mr. Trump, saying that you would need a magic wand to bring back the US economy. And Mr. Trump turned out had a magic wand. It was when he let loose the ingenuity of the American people by taking away regulations that were constraining them. Mr. Trump has made NATO pay for their own defense, has brought about the inconsistency of protecting Germany while Germany is buying its energy from Russia. He has brought peace between several Arab states and Israel. He has recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He's recognized the Golan Heights as part of Israel. He has brought peace between Kosovo and Serbia. Remember the war by Bill Clinton, where there were bombings for 65 continuous days. Mr. Clinton never won a peace prize. Mr. Trump has already been nominated for 3. 2, 1 from Australia, an Australians, and 2 from Norway. Mr. Biden accuses Mr. Trump of being a racist. Mr. Trump was against the people knocking down our monuments. He was saying that if you're talking about Confederate monuments, there are people who think they should be torn down, and there are people who think they should stay up. And he said there are fine people on both sides of this controversy. Mr. Biden has been super cynical, accusing that these people had bulging in their necks, their veins were bulging, and they were shouting anti-Semitic slogans. Mr. Trump has a daughter who's Jewish. He has a son-in-law who's Jewish. He has Jewish grandchildren. Mr. Trump cannot by any circumstance be thought to be anti-Semitic or in favor of anti-Semitism with all he's done for the state of Israel. Going down the list is so wide, and the lies against Mr. Trump are so frequent that during the last debate, he really lost his cool. Because when you're accused constantly, when you are put spies into your own campaign, when you are accused of being a Russian agent, when in fact Hillary Clinton was the person that paid for that dirty dossier that everybody knew was a lie, when the FBI forgot all its rules in the FISA courts, when Mr. Trump has been impeached for a phone call, for one phone call, you can see why a normal person would sometimes lose his cool. And if there's anything that describes Mr. Trump, he's a normal person. Mr. Trump speaks directly to you. If he has to criticize Fox News, he will criticize Fox News. If he has to go back and say that he's now looked at China in a different way after the terrible crime against humanity perpetrated by the Communist Party in China, the same Mr. Trump who was trying to get along with China was the very first person to put tariffs on China. My conclusion, Mr. Trump is a patriot. He loves his country with all his faults, which all of us have. You have to appreciate that this is a man who tells you how he feels and explains to you his reasons. And he does them not like a politician, but like a person who will be sitting in your living room. Therefore, although there are many, many reasons why to vote for Mr. Trump, it's even a bigger reason why not to vote for Mr. Biden, because standing behind Mr. Biden is Mr. Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the anti-fascist called anti-fascist Antifa, which are really fascist, and the Black Lives Matter movement, which has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, as they are in favor of abortion clinics for Black people. They are in favor of keeping the Black people down with slogans and with the theories like that Mr. Trump has just abolished, the critical history theories that we have been paying with our own money for our federal employees to be indoctrinated. Today, in many corporations, when you're hired, you have to go through this indoctrination. We have lost considerable amounts of liberty. We have almost lost our republic. I am sorry, but I cannot feel that I am exaggerating in any way. The situation is critical. Everyone needs to vote and needs to vote against those people that really want to turn off our republic. They really want to upset the system. They openly, embracingly state that you have to burn the system down, and they have physically burnt the system down. You have to realize that in Oregon, they lit fire to a courthouse with people inside. They had blocked the doors. These people should be charged with murder, attempted murder. They're not just destroying a building. You have seen in the news with your own eyes the attempts against the police. Turns out that trying to kill a police is not a hate crime, according to them. But hate, opinions, hateful speech, they are going to take it off from all the media. If they consider it's hate, they will accuse you of being a racist, and they will turn off your mic. So the situation is critical, and I will do my utmost to try to alert everyone as far as I can about the dangers that we face. This is our Exile broadcast. Our purpose is for you, my fellow Americans, never to have to be an exile. Good night.